I think it's a return to a pre-pandemic, even pre-Marvel level. I think when Marvel really started cooking and having all their films open to such high levels, everyone kind of got out of the way. I see now that, there's a world post-pandemic, and the new model looks like the old model, where you can put two large films on the same weekend, have them both shine, have different audiences, different demographics that all these can really serve.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria from Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. Here this week, once again, with my colleagues and co-hosts Chad Kennerk and Rebecca Pahle, also from Box Office Pro. And this week, we are previewing what is likely to be the beginning of a hot streak at the box office. And to speak about that in our feature segment this week, we will be joined by Chris Randleman, Chief Revenue Officer of Flix Brewhouse, and one of the panelists in our box office forecasting panel, which looks at the entire theatrical market and forecasts the opening weekend and theatrical domestic runs of all wide release titles coming to North America. That is on the second half of this episode. But before we get to Chris, Chad, Rebecca, welcome back. We've got movies to talk about because I feel if we're not keeping up with them, we're going to be very behind come December 1st. Rebecca, let's start with you. What did you catch last weekend?
I did a little bit of catch up and got out to see Heretic at the AMC Empire 25. It was a bit tough finding a showtime that worked amidst all the Red One screening times. So, but I'm not going to complain about, having a movie where my boss cannot get mad at me for leaving work early, a little bit early to go to the movies.
No, that's
it's
technically work, right?
It is technically
that's what
work.
we do. It's fine. You talk about it on air. It's not playing hooky if it's an assignment.
I wish it had been for a better movie. I didn't.
Oh no, didn't deliver on your expectations. Well, the cinema score kind of echoes that. I think it was like a C minus, if I'm not mistaken.
It looks beautiful. Like it's Park Chan-wook's cinematographer. I disliked it. I would have hated it if I'd seen it like on a screener or on TV. Like at least it looks great.
Chad Kennerk, you finally got to watch Wicked. Is it fair to say this is the one movie you've been most looking forward to in years?
Yes, I am rejoicifying because Wicked is here and I have seen it.
I know that's a Wicked in joke. The rejoicifying.
That's an Oz word for the Aussians out there.
We have to step this up, Rebecca. So what's the verdict here? I mean, where did you watch it? What did you think of it?
Yeah, there was concern over like how it was going to look. I mean, should I see it in IMAX? What? Give me a format I should see it in.
Right. Yeah, I saw it at an AMC press screening in Dolby, so that checked a lot of boxes for me. It's been a long time coming because Universal and producer Mark Platt first announced this film 12 years ago. It's been in development for such a long time. And I think the timing's right. John M. Chu is, I think, the right director for it. I don't know how you adapt this musical and get a better outcome than what I saw. It's a beloved stage musical, so you have to get that right. And if you don't, I think you're in trouble. And I think he got it right. I do think some of the CGI detracts a little bit. If you're going to plant 9 million tulips, why not make everything as practical as possible?
Yeah, you got the money.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think overall it really delivered, and everyone in the cast is great, but this is Cynthia Erivo's movie, and I think her emotional life is so rich and something that you don't always see in a big tentpole feature. So,
are you wearing the Variety Gold Heart pin?
I am wearing
to our listeners. You can't see this. You can't see this on the audio version. There's no video version of this podcast. Chad, knowing there is no video version of this podcast, willingly showed up to the taping wearing the Variety Children's Charity Gold Heart pin of Wicked. I love it.
Knowing we would. I mean, it's good. It's to support a good cause, and I'm definitely. I mean, there have to be more green ones than pink ones selling, right?
Like I wanted to remind everyone to get your pin. It's a great stocking stuffer and goes to a great cause. So I do want to mention just a couple things about the screening because it really feels like an event movie. Mine was a filled press screening and 3/4 of the audience were in green and or pink on their own volition. So that for me was like, wow, I haven't seen this since Barbie. So that was great to see. I think the other thing was the demographics of the screening, everything from little girls in green and pink dresses to grandmothers in green and pink suit jackets. So it was a big, broad demographic there as well.
You mentioned that Barbenheimer comparison, and Chad, you're talking about Barbie a lot in the way this reminds you as a cultural event. We'll hit on those aspects later on in this episode because I think it's a big, big part of the weekend. If we remember, in last July, we had Barbie open to 162 million and Oppenheimer open to 82 million. Those were respectively huge overperformances, by the way. They very much outdid all expectations. Right now, the expectations are somewhere along the lines of where Barbie and Oppenheimer were tracking before this overperformance. Wicked, we're going to hear a lot more of this in our feature segment, probably topping out between 140 and 150 million, with a base between 110 and 120. And Gladiator topping out maybe to 80 million. So even on the high range here, we'll get close to. Right now, it's lightning in a bottle what we had last year. We could get there. But it's different this year because it's not an opening weekend concentration, guys. We've got Thanksgiving weekend and Thanksgiving week coming on the heels of this opening weekend. I'll give you an example. My ticket for Wicked isn't this weekend. It's next weekend while I'm on Thanksgiving break. And we did that, on purpose and in order to secure those seats. I think it's going to be a lot more, let's say, evened out in the coming weeks, well into the holiday season. Chad, building on that Variety Gold Heart pin campaign that you're proudly wearing here on the taping, we've got news about Variety of Southern California's latest honoree in their annual event.
Right. They're honoring Cinemark's Wanda Gearhart Fearing, and it's at their annual Heart of Show business luncheon taking place on December 12th, celebrating Wanda's outstanding contributions to the entertainment industry.
That's going to be a great event happening over there for our colleagues in Southern California. And up here in New York, Rebecca, you're part of the Motion Picture Club, another industry group that gives a lot to charities. They've got their own holiday luncheon happening. When is it? The first week of December?
Yep, it's December 5th. It is moved to a new location as of last year to a Brazilian steakhouse, Churrascaria platform. I've never had such good
C minus.
Just at a
I'm giving you a
variety of
C
meat.
minus on prononciation. I'm sure the meat is great. The pronunciation can improve.
Churrascaria.
Solid. Yeah, that's D plus. I mean, I'm going to start giving you Joker subtitles to pronounce.
Oh dear. No, but yeah,
So when
it's
always
place? It's just Thursday, December 5th, starting at 12 p.m. You can go to motionpictureclub.org to buy some tickets.
And continuing on the news side of things here, Chad, we've also got new promotions over at Alamo Drafthouse.
Right. Alamo Drafthouse Cinema named Dana Pearson Chief Financial Officer and Alex Schulman Chief Product and Strategy Officer. Dana's been with the company, I think, since 2020 and has really kind of reinvented their budgeting, financial analysis, treasury, stuff along those lines. And then Alex joined in 2022.
Yeah, it's good seeing like the internal hires of really kind of shoring up what was already in place before Alamo Drafthouse was acquired by Sony. I feel like we're really seeing what they've said we would see, which is not a lot of changes. Like it's the same team. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think seeing the sort of executive suite there settle in for the long haul post Sony acquisition.
Yeah, it's always a good sign to see veterans in this industry continuing their career and delivering on those guest experiences. And we'll be needing top line guest experiences because, as we mentioned, we are on the eve of a box office rally here to close out the year. Before we start with Chris Randleman, who is going to be going over all of the holiday season's wide releases, let's go over those overseas numbers for Gladiator 2, Rebecca. This is already opened in over 60 markets outside of North America. What have we seen early on from this title?
Yeah, 63 markets, and it debuted in at number one in, I believe, all of them. Yep, including the UK, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are looking at the biggest international opening ever for a Ridley Scott film and the biggest Paramount R-rated opening of all time as well. So, notching up some of those records, getting some good momentum leading into the U.S. premiere. Excited. I'm excited to see it, though I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Daniel, what is this marketing thing that Paramount has going for Gladiator 2? Because I just feel like I have to experience it that way.
There's a lot of marketing efforts, both for Gladiator 2 and for Wicked. And right now, my college football team is doing fantastically well. So I'm glued to watching college football really for the last month. And you cannot avoid the Gladiator 2 trailers.
Oh,
I mean, the
yeah.
marketing spend on
That's an
television for
audience that
Gladiator
they
2
yeah.
really like through the roof. Like, I commend Paramount for the marketing work they're doing to reach that demo right now. Really, I mean, wall to wall on Saturdays, if you watch college football, you will find these Gladiator 2 trailers. Here in New York, Rebecca, I don't know if you've been to the Regal at Times Square lately.
I was just across the street the other day, but yeah, they're introducing in collaboration with Pepsi, the Pepsi Coliseum. I
The
love a good pun.
Coliseum.
I love it
That's
that
a very good pun.
I feel
Yes.
like I need to be at the Coliseum to see this movie.
I have not experienced the immersive marketing experience of Pepsi's Coliseum around Gladiator 2 yet. I probably will, just for fun, and I will report back with my findings. But it's really great to see a movie like this really put the work in to get into the zeitgeist. Another movie that is totally into the zeitgeist, Chad, you were talking about just that diversity in demographics, the people excited to going to this all media screening of Wicked over in Denver. We're seeing Wicked permeate the culture in a way that I haven't seen since Barbie. And I might even say this might be even bigger than Barbie in the way that it's broken through the quote unquote traditional movie marketing, in the sense that everywhere you turn, there seems to be a Wicked branded something.
It definitely seems like Universal is like from that very first CinemaCon presentation, you definitely got the sense they are going all in. And yeah, it's weird to think that somebody is maybe having like more brand activations and partnerships than Barbie did, but Wicked's close, if not above that.
Yeah. I think one thing we haven't talked about on the podcast is we have entire generations that grew up with that annual pre-home video viewing of The Wizard of Oz on TV. And so I do think
Mm.
a lot of that nostalgia is coming through in some of these marketing efforts, getting to some of those audiences.
And you have a lot of kids who are nostalgic for Wicked. I mean, it's been around at this point like 22 years.
21 years, I think. Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, my wife is a huge fan of the musical. I haven't seen it, but I'm a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz. It's one of those questions that we always get as movie people: what's the best film ever made? That doesn't mean what's my favorite movie or different nuances in that question. But if I were to give you an example of what is the best film ever made, if you put a gun to my head, I'll say Wizard of Oz 9 out of 10 times. I adore that movie. I love that movie. In terms of what this medium can do through the ages, through the Hollywood system, through cultures, I think it nails it. So I'm a massive Wizard of Oz fan. I can't wait to see this, and this being my introduction to the musical. I think there's a lot of expectation riding on this movie. And it's something you said at the beginning of this podcast, Chad, that it delivered on even those lofty expectations. And those theater kids that are listening here, when's the last time we had a musical deliver on expectations? Because I don't think In the Heights did that. I don't think the Spielberg West Side Story quite got there. I think it was a really good adaptation, that one in particular. Dear Evan Hansen, Cats, let's not even start. But even going
Cats
back
delivered. Cats delivered
No.
something.
even going back to Les Mis, remember that Les Mis that came out
Mm.
in, when was it, 2012, 2011? It didn't go that extra mile that I really wanted it to go. And what Chad is telling me right now is that not only is this going to pack audiences on opening weekend, if people like it as much as Chad did coming into those expectations, it's very likely we'll see repeat viewers for sing-along screenings
I was
well
gonna
into
say,
December.
I mean, we
Yeah.
were kind of raising our eyebrows a little bit at sing-along screenings being part of first run. Typically, you'll see that, once the movie's been in cinemas for a while or coming back kind of in rep screenings. But I mean, I eat my words on that one because it definitely seems like there was really good planning in getting those sing-along screenings set. I'm sure that they are going to be a very hot ticket. And it's just great to see that last year with Warner Brothers and this year with Universal that film as a medium, it can be that it has that connective power. It can really become a part of mainstream culture if you put money and planning and good strategy into making it that way. Because I mean, you got to imagine that there was a risk for both of those films of like oversaturation. The film has to be good. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. If my screening was any indication, the buzz in the lobby in the auditorium was good going in. It was double or triple coming out. So I think the word of mouth could be huge.
Which bodes well for next December when the second half of the musical comes out.
Right.
That's something I wanted to ask
speaking of
you
that,
about because
yeah,
that wasn't something that was advertised. When I told my wife, "Hey, we're going to pay to see half the movie," she was shocked. She was like, "What? They're really they're gonna kill it off in intermission?" How was the reaction to that? Were people okay with it?
Yeah, people are okay with it. It's not in the marketing at all, but the opening title has part 1 on it. So up front, oh, this is a part 1. Even if you didn't know coming into it, it's right there. So yeah, and it really is just act 1 of the musical.
Does it do kind of what Dune did of the build up, and then like peak excitement, they cut it off?
I think, that's a good question. I think that it has enough of a resolution that
that's good.
Someone, if they didn't know it was a part 1, if they were looking down at their popcorn and didn't see the title card, they might be like, okay. So that's the backstory of The Wizard of Oz.
It holds up as its own.
Yeah. I think because of the awareness of the story of The Wizard of Oz, you could kind of look at this as just a one-off movie if you wanted to.
Which Universal is definitely not wanting. They're wanting everyone to see both parts of that movie. Yeah. And man, it is looking like millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of people are going to be checking it out through the end of the year.
And we'll be going into our forecast for both Wicked and Gladiator 2 in the second half of this episode shortly. But before we do want to talk about some of the merchandising opportunities that are out there for moviegoers, because we talk about what this collectible obsession has done for the moviegoing experience. Rebecca just had a wonderful article, which you could find in the last print edition of Box Office Pro magazine, and you can find on our website now, boxofficepro.com, going into the influence of collectibles at the movies. Chad, you've been keeping up on some of the merchandising that we're seeing in chains for both these movies. What are the standouts for you? Where can folks go to find the most interesting and unique, let's say, popcorn tubs or collectibles?
Yeah, I think in terms of Wicked, I think that's the one film that I'm seeing the most chains have merch for. I think for me, just looking at them, the Regal popcorn lantern for Wicked is pretty cool.
I like the Alamo. They have the green and pink Cocoa mugs.
Cocoa Cup. That was the other one I was going to say. Yeah.
And then of course, I see him. I'm just looking through the list at everything that Ariana Grande's own wildly successful beauty brand, RAM Beauty, has. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff there that is, I couldn't get it if I want it because it's all sold out.
There's also some chains I don't know if they're having them in cinemas or if they're just on their merch sites, but there's some really cool kind of just like green glass Oz mugs.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Nice. It's great to hear that. On Gladiator 2, you have to think maybe the dad demographic isn't buying into the collectible thing. I say this as an adult man that buys the $19 collectible beer at Citi Field. Rebecca's a Mets fan. You've been hit by that collectible beer cup at Citi Field.
I use that collectible beer cup You got to use it to make up for the cost that you spent on it. I mean, it feels like a definite dad thing, like a popcorn bowl shaped like the Coliseum. That sounds like
Does that
dad
exist?
kryptonite.
It does exist.
That? Okay,
No.
where can we find that?
Cinemark has one.
Yeah, AMC has a different version of that as well. And then there's the helmet tin, which a lot of chains, there's kind of like there's certain pieces of merch I'm noticing that are chain specific. And then there are certain pieces of merch that are across lots of chains. And the helmet tin, a lot of chains have that. I would eat popcorn out of that.
Well, you can find all the list of the collectible options and merchandising you can get for these two movies on our website, boxofficepro.com, along with our final weekend forecast for the titles hitting screens this weekend. And now, without any further ado, we've got Chris Randleman from Flix Brewhouse and part of our box office forecasting panel joining us to talk about the entire holiday season forecast that we have ahead of us at the box office. That is coming up right after this word from our sponsors.
Imagine a world where your cinema's digital experience is as unforgettable as the movies you show. At Box Office, we strive to make that world a reality. We offer innovative solutions like custom-built websites, mobile apps, and user-friendly ticketing packages crafted to meet the unique needs of cinemas. It's all about enhancing customer loyalty and making booking a breeze. Take your cinema's online experience to the next level with Boost. Contact us at sales@boxoffice.com to learn more.
And we are back here on the Box Office Podcast in our forecasting segment with one of our panelists of the Box Office Forecasting Panel, which is a group of industry executives representing exhibition, distribution, and premium large format, chiming in here to give us their thoughts on where films are going to open, what their theatrical run is going to look like. We get those numbers, we average them out, we put a formula in there, applying different metrics to each, to bring our final product to you guys every Wednesday for our weekend forecast and every Friday for our long range forecast. And I'm happy to introduce one of those members of that panel, Chris Randleman, the Chief Revenue Officer of Flix Brewhouse, making his Box Office podcast debut. Chris, welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Nice to be here and excited to do this.
Yeah, it's great to finally have you here on the podcast. We email basically Monday morning quarterbacking every weekend once everything is settled, once we can take an assessment of the weekend and look forward. And we're going to be doing just that with you right now, looking at all of the titles, starting the hot streak at the box office that we all expect this weekend going into the end of the year, looking at the major wide release titles that we all have on our calendar, getting the exhibitor's perspective on this. Let's start with what may be a repeat of the business that we saw last summer with that Barbenheimer phenomenon. Two major tentpoles from rival studios coming out on the same day. There's an overlapping audience there, but there's also audiences that are basically served to different aspects of these films. We're talking about, of course, Gladiator 2 from Paramount and Wicked Part 1 from Universal. I'll read out the numbers that we have here in store, and I want to compare them with the numbers that you're providing us just so we can see how our numbers track with yours. Chris, the consensus here from our panel, starting with Gladiator 2, has an opening weekend domestically between $65 and $75 million. Does that add up to what you're seeing?
Yeah, that's especially with the latest pre-sales and it's even accelerating, I think, to a nice number going into the weekend. So Paramount's just done a wonderful job marketing it and really getting it out there. If anybody's been watching any sort of sports lately, they have been hammering the commercials on television. So and it's looking very good for it. I'd say 65 to 75 is definitely a solid number, and I expect it to hit that this weekend.
Well, let's talk about that other film because, of course, Wicked Part 1, when the year started, I had this as a question mark, where you could see this being a huge hit, but with a track record of musicals, there was always a little bit of risk involved. After that pre-sales period, I think we can comfortably call this a success already. Right now, our panel cumulatively is seeing an opening weekend between 115 to 135 million. On your ballot, what do you have Wicked Part 1 opening to?
I've got it between 120 and 150 right now. So I think that 135 is definitely right in the middle of that range there. The review should be coming out very shortly, the full review drop. I did see this morning that it's 99% on the audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's a great indicator. If it's that high and with that many verified reviews already, could it get an A plus cinema score and drive this even higher? So it definitely is accelerating right now. The reviews will drive it, and sky could be the limit for it. Like you said, it's at 135 kind of consensus between all of us right now. I could see it higher. I would not be shocked if it's higher.
That's great news. And you look at those two high marks, it kind of adds up to close to where we were for Barbenheimer last year, right? I mean, I know it's lightning in a bottle, what we had last summer. And of course, how this holds is going to be a little different because there wasn't anything else coming in last summer once those two movies got out. There's going to be a lot more competition this year. But to have a repeat success of this two tentpole strategy on the same release date, do you think this is something we're going to see in the future? Because I know studios shied away from doing this, but to me, this looks like an embrace to the system.
I think it's a return to a pre-pandemic, even pre-Marvel level. I think when Marvel really started cooking and having all their films open to such high levels, everyone kind of got out of the way. I see now that, there's a world post-pandemic, and the new model looks like the old model where you can put two large films on the same weekend, have them both shine, have different audiences, different demographics that all these can really serve. And we're getting back to, I think, a level of attendance. It's not all the way back, but we're getting back to where people will see multiple movies in a weekend, multiple movies over a week. And that's not unusual anymore. That used to be a natural, normal thing. I think this kind of portends like to how things can go and where we can go from here. And I welcome the competition. I love both of them basically feeding off of each other, driving each other to higher levels. And we need that. That's what we were missing. We're missing the volume of film. It's not healthy just to have one film and nothing else, because what if that one film fails? And we've seen the bottom can drop out of films. Joker 2 showed that just a month or so ago. So
that derailed October, right? I mean, everybody steered clear from Joker 2, giving it the space to be a hit. The movie, by design, wasn't going to be that. And then we had 3 bad weekends instead of 1 bad weekend.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So if you go with that strategy, kind of the strategy that we had for a while where you just put one big movie on a weekend and everything clears out, if it fails, like you're in bad trouble because it not only tanks that weekend, it tanks the following weekends coming up. So this is just a way to kind of some insurance, right? If one fails, one does well, that's then a fail safe there. But even more so, I really do believe that this drives excitement for theatrical and becomes, we don't want to recreate, like you said, with the marketing, recreate Barbenheimer or Glicked or whatever we're calling, we all settled on for this. But things like that are what returns like kind of the aura to going to theatrical and having it be event driven. And then once you're there, you're advertised other films and smaller movies that get you back. You go to one, you're going to want to go to more. And I think that frequency of film going is really what we are all striving for here.
Well, it's going to be a weekend dominated by those two titles. Currently on the box office company's Showtime's dashboard, we're seeing 55% plus of all showtimes in the United States being taken up by both Wicked and Gladiator 2 combined. Wicked currently outpacing Gladiator 2 by 9% in terms of market share on showtimes. That data is going to be available on our website, boxofficepro.com, with our final weekend forecast. It's going to be a huge frame, and it's going to lead into what we expect could be one of the biggest Thanksgiving weekends of all time. And that is going to be anchored by a new release from Disney here that wasn't originally on the schedule. This time last year, Moana 2 was going to be an animated series on Disney+. They backtracked. They said, hey, we have something here, and we're going to get this title in theaters. Moana 2 currently tracking cumulatively from our panel on a range between 125 to 150 million on the 3-day opening weekend. And of course, since it opens on a Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we have a 5-day range here averaging between 150 to 175. Where do you think this is going to fall?
Without overstepping, I think you can probably tear up those numbers, throw them out the window, and create a new ceiling of up to 225 million on the 5 day. We're seeing
Wow.
sales that are just quite frankly insane and not a whole lot of comps to them. Even trying to comp off of, I think, which is the record is in 2019 with Frozen 2 and the Thanksgiving season record, it's going to blow that away. I can just confidently say from our own pre-sales, from pre-sales I've seen from others, and just knowing now that the film is actually very good. It's a minor miracle that they took, maybe not even a minor miracle. It's a major miracle that they took something that was destined for streaming, took it, saw the quality in it, made it for theatrical, and it turned out very, very well. It's just a huge win. It's been the biggest streaming title, I think, for the last 5 years. So the audience, since the first one has come out, has only grown. And I think that can send it to the absolute stratospheric levels that you're going to see here. I think you can lock it in. It's going to create, between Moana 2, Wicked, and Gladiator 2, you're going to have the biggest Thanksgiving season that we've ever seen, unadjusted for inflation in the history of box office, is what we're seeing right now.
I just love the fact that this is $1 billion globally for movie theaters that wasn't part of our forecasting this time last year. That's
Right.
a fantastic news for everybody involved.
Right. I think it could be, upwards of $1.5 billion that we never expected in our theatrical marketplace globally. And it is just such a win. And it's been marketed, I think, just Disney in general this year. Disney is our biggest studio overall. Sometimes they get some flack for being so big, but I'd say that the marketing overall and everything that they've done this year has been wonderful to drive people back into our theaters. It's greatly appreciated, and they look like they have a lot more coming. They have another one coming at the end of the year here that I think is going to do very well. But yeah, it's just great in driving our sales and our attendance and getting people back into theaters. And it's such a great switch that they've, because they had gone to a almost all streaming, phase. I can't blame them because the pandemic kind of created those, and the streaming wars created those kind of conditions for that. But they saw where there's a 3-tiered revenue system that has worked for 100 years, basically. And they went back to it, and now they're being rewarded. We're all being rewarded for it, and could not be happier that this is happening.
I love what you're saying here when you mentioned that this could very well be the highest grossing Thanksgiving frame of all time, unadjusted for inflation, of course. Now, for that to happen, it's not going to be off the back of Moana alone. How strong could we possibly expect a holdover for Gladiator 2 and Wicked Part 1 after huge opening weekends this weekend?
Thankfully, one thing that we haven't had to utilize so much is we run theaters that are smaller in screen size. So we have 8 and 9 screens at our locations. But there's a lot of, AMC, the Regals, Cinemarks, they all have 14 screens, 20 screens, 30 screens at some of them. You're going to see that utilization. There is not going to, I think, for the big locations, lack any screen space. I don't foresee Gladiator or Wicked losing any screens going into next week. So they all three can comfortably coexist. And I think the demographics for all three just complement each other. Just looking at our pre-sales, a lot of times at this point, your pre-sales are very preview heavy, like Thursday previews. Wicked's even having Wednesday screenings. They even had Amazon Monday screenings. But we're seeing robust, big numbers for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, as everyone gets off for the Thanksgiving weekend, for the Thanksgiving week. We're seeing not just like opening and then a big fall off. It's solid all the way through. And same thing with Gladiator 2. Like, we're seeing the same sort of thing and seeing strong sales already into the following week. So everything I see just indicates, and the reviews as well, and audience scores coming out now, that it just indicates that people are enjoying these films. They're entertaining. People want to see them, and they're going to do very well right alongside each other. There is going to be healthy competition, but it's all helping each other.
I can't wait for this to start this weekend with that Gladiator 2 and Wicked Part 1 double feature. And it's something we need because we mentioned just how weak October was, and we didn't originally expected to be a weak October. We really thought Joker 2 would perform. We thought Venom maybe would be a little bit closer to what the prior Venom films would be. This October was the worst October in the post-pandemic era. So having this bounce back, having this recovery, I think is everything we need to finish the year in a strong note. That leads us into December, Chris. We've got December 6th with a lot of holdovers, of course, and Y2K from A24 sneaking in there. But let's focus on December 13th, because that's the next frame where we have new movies from the studio side, kind of awkwardly sandwiched between tentpoles. You've got a big bet here from Warner Brothers, Lord of the Rings. I apologize for mispronouncing the subtitle, but I didn't title this movie. I don't know who did. The War of the
Yes, War of the
Rohirrim. Okay.
We're just calling it Lord of the Rings anime. That's what we've.
It's a good middle ground. Lord of the Rings between Folia Du and this. It's not been a great year for the tentpole subtitle. But let's not call this animated version of the Lord of the Rings, and it's not even the regular Lord of the Rings. It's a separate story in the Lord of the Rings universe, told in anime format or form or style. I don't know the nomenclature we're using, but it's a sort of movie that gets me a little bit nervous because I know Lord of the Rings is an important IP. I think it's Amazon spent a bunch of money on a Lord of the Rings TV series. I don't know who watches that, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if Amazon knows who watches that.
I think Jeff Bezos alone watches his $2 billion show. Yes.
Yeah, for him, that's not a big investment, right?
Right. It's yes.
Well, he might be the only one to keep this afloat, because I really don't know how to look at something like this. Right now, the panel has a very low cumulative score for that opening weekend of this Lord of the Rings anime film, between 5 to 15 million. Are we lowballing this?
No, I don't think so. I think it's in the unfortunate space of, and it's moved multiple times. Warner Brothers has moved it. It originally was going to be a spring release about a year ago, and it's moved around, and then it's been marketed rather late. So we still have hopes for it, but I do think just unfortunately it might get squeezed right in the middle of 4 different or 5 different monster films now. So it's going to open, but I think it's going to have trouble holding on. I'm not sure of the quality either. I have not seen the film yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but have not seen it yet. But yes, to your point, I think it's in a precarious position in that weekend of the 13th, and we could see an opening, but where it goes from there is a big question mark.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a struggle for that title. And then the other film we have on the schedule has also been rescheduled a number of times.
Yes.
From Sony, the third Spider-Man movie this year that doesn't have Spider-Man in it. I don't come up with these strategies. God bless them. Best of luck to them. Kraven the Hunter. Chris, I saw footage for this movie in the summer of 2022.
Yes.
And again, last weekend in the first trailer I saw since that footage I saw over 2 years ago. Right now, we've got, again, a very difficult forecast for this title, between $15 and $25 million opening weekend. I'm going to ask you the same question. Are we also lowballing the potential of something like Kraven the Hunter?
I don't think so. I think it could go higher. I think that it does have a niche audience, or it has a hook to it with the R rating. It's an ultra violent R-rated film. It does have some very likable actors like Russell Crowe in this film that could drive an audience in there. But I think it's a pretty quick burn. I do really love the director, J.C. Chandor, I think is how you pronounce his name.
They're not even marketing that. I love J.C. Chandor. I had no idea he made this movie 3 years ago.
Yes, he's great. And like you said, made it 3 years ago. There was some reshoots. It's moved 3 to 4 times. There's movies that have recovered from that, but it's not the best indicator that it's moved around. There has been talk in some of the trades and some of the behind the scenes that it is actually turned out well. Again, I have not seen it. I hope it did, but I think Gladiator 2 might hurt it a little, because Gladiator 2 is probably going to still be playing pretty strong on the 13th, where it's really only the third week of that. It's probably not fallen all that much by that time. So, it could get squeezed. The thing they had going for it is the R rating and the violence and all that. And Gladiator 2 kind of fills that for that audience overall. So yeah, it also is in a precarious position. They're sandwiched in between 5 huge movies.
Man, if you want to see a good J.C. Chandler movie, you see that one with Robert Redford on a boat. There's like 2
Yes,
lines of dialogue in it. All is lost. Wonderful. Love that movie.
it's great. I love his movie with Oscar Isaacs and Jessica Chastain.
Yes, A Most Violent Year about
Most
fuel
Violent Year.
suppliers in New
Yeah,
Jersey, I think.
yeah.
Wonderfully wonky movie. I adore that movie as well. And Margin Call. I have to shout out Margin Call. I don't know if you have this as a moviegoer, because I know you're also a huge movie fan. You've been working your entire career in this industry. There's movies that I'll just see individual clips of them on YouTube more
Yep.
than anything else. For me, it's like Rocky IV and Margin Call from J.C.
Yes.
Chandler. I just go back to those bookmarks on YouTube to see
I
those
love
scenes.
Margin Call. I wish it would have gotten a bigger release and been more of a theatrical hit, but it was definitely one of those that did well in the physical media era where it had a second life after the release and did well on streaming and has done well, especially in the TikTok and other clips that it seems to show up in over and over and over now. And I also love I love JC's streaming movie, Triple Frontier.
Right. Yeah. That also went through some rescheduling and some difficulties finding its way to an audience.
Yes, yes. But yeah, so I really enjoy his work and I hope he, for everything, we root for every movie that comes out
Right.
theatrically. And I really hope it does well. I hope the Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim does well. But, it's just reality is that it's become a very crowded slate. And then, in addition to those, there's going to be movies that from A24, like Y2K on the 6th and Queer is coming out, and Baby Girl's in there, and September 5 from Paramount, and then we don't even get to the the movies on the 25th, which Baby Girl's included that, but Nosferatu, a complete unknown, The Fire Inside, it is there, and then you're looking at the possibility that Wicked and Moana 2 definitely carry over. It was just announced yesterday that Wicked's going to have sing-along screenings starting on Christmas Day in at least 1,000 locations. There is a lot of competition. It is, Daniel, it is the best problem to have. There is no greater problem than going, how the hell do we get all this in, right? Like we had the opposite problem the last 4 years since the pandemic. Now we have the old problem that we used to have is how the hell do we get all of this film in? And all of it, has different audiences and is good. Like I've seen The Fire Inside. That's a good film. I've seen all of those at this point, except for Nosferatu, which I hear is wonderful and cannot wait to see that. But yeah, it's just a very, very crowded slate. And we haven't even mentioned Mufasa and Sonic 3.
Well, let's talk about those. Yeah, that's our pre-Christmas frame on December 20th. Again, 2 huge movies opening up on the same weekend. These competing probably a little bit closer than the Gladiator 2 Wicked combo. The tracking on these have gone a little bit all over the place because I think, at least for Mufasa, I think that's a little bit harder to see where it's going to end up. Sonic, we've got enough a track record to kind of have expectations. Sonic right now, the third part of the Sonic the Hedgehog trilogy, or new trilogy, with this third part coming out, we're currently seeing an opening weekend range between 50 to 70 as I tally everybody's votes here from the panel. Do you think this could perform a little bit higher than that?
Yes, I think it could do really well. And I think the biggest driver here is not to really compare the opening weekend to what we traditionally would at any other time. Because the last time the setup for the calendar was like this, I think was 2018 and 2019, which happened to be the 2 biggest years in box office history unadjusted for inflation. So it's just one of those where you get out on a Friday, everyone gets out on the Friday the 20th, and then nobody goes back to school until January 6th, essentially. So you have 3 solid weeks of just the best setup where Christmas Eve and New Year's fall right in the middle of the week, which is great. And you want that because that just drives more business during the week and then into the weekend. So even if you see smaller openings, a $60 to $70 million opening from like Mufasa and Sonic, which I think both are going to do very well. Mufasa, actually, we do have some great data on it because it went on sale yesterday, and the sales we're seeing so far are really strong. Especially, they're not really going to kick in until the calendar turns into December and you really get people thinking more about the holidays because you've got Moana and these other movies that have not come out yet and that we're going to see this weekend and this next week coming up. But a good comp for, I think, for Mufasa, oddly, is Aquaman, which I believe came out in 2019 or 2018, had almost the same calendar setup, opened up to 68 million and ran its global total up to 1.1 billion. So I definitely think that you might see something like that. I think $1 billion for this film globally is definitely on the table. And Sonic has been, I think, artificially held down because of when the past two came out. The first one came out right before the whole lockdown started to happen. The second one came out right after theaters just started to get on their feet in early 2022. And I think both finished around 400 million, 300 to 400 million in that range. I think you could see that go up to $700 million globally for Sonic, just on it being a family film and the calendar setting up so well, and the goodwill that Paramount has done to build that franchise up. And even through their streaming shows to drive that even more. I think Knuckles is their streaming show that has really built an audience for it. So I think we're going to see just great things from those. And then all the other films I mentioned before that as well are going to fill in. And we have the holdovers from Thanksgiving.
And we also have to get used to a good problem, as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, Chris, in terms of finally we have a diverse number of titles hitting screens. We talked about the December 20th frame, December 13th. We have to talk about Christmas here, because rather than having another huge tentpole coming out in Christmas, we have a number of interesting movies from smaller distributors, movies that don't have to make 100 million plus, but that could play a factor in bringing audiences for that repeat visit. I'm going to name some of these titles of what audiences have to look forward to. You've got on December 20th, Homestead from Angel Studios. On Christmas Day, you've got Baby Girl from A24. I saw that recently. It's spicy in a good way. I can tell you that right now. Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. I can't wait to see that. The Fire Inside, Amazon MGM taking the story of Clarissa Shields, the champion boxer, to the big screen. And then Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown from Searchlight, also opening on Christmas Day. My question for you is, are there enough screens at this point? Because it is going to get crowded in terms of traffic and folks fighting to get those auditoriums for audiences.
It's going to be close. There might not be. I think that unfortunately somebody could. There's still a lot of megaplexes and bigger plexes that have 12 to 14 screens and on up. I think those are fine. I think when you get down, when it's you get theaters that have 7 screens, 8 screens, 9 screens, that's where you run into the big problems where we would love to play everything. We're going to try to give everyone a fair shot and play everything. But there just becomes a numbers game where, it is still a business and we still have to make money. And if, you can't just go with one screen of Mufasa and one screen of Sonic, you're committing financial suicide if you do that. And so as much as you want to support, and everyone really does want to support, there is just a lot of film, and getting it in everywhere to really serve all audiences is going to be a challenge. But as you mentioned, and I said earlier, it's the best challenge you can have. I'd rather have that challenge any day than the one we faced the previous 4 years. And who knows, maybe something spreads out a little bit more into January. There's also a couple limited releases that are spreading into January, like The Brutalist and the Robbie Williams picture. I cannot remember, A Better Man from Paramount. That is
right,
also
where pop star Robbie Williams is played by a digital primate.
Basically, it looks like Caesar. I think Weta Digital did the effects on it, so it's Caesar. It basically looks like Caesar from the Planet of the Apes movies. So,
yeah,
an interesting movie. I've seen it. It's an interesting movie. But yeah, there's something there for everyone. So to your question, though, yeah, I think there's enough screens, but there's also not enough. There's a lot of film and a lot of good film, and everybody is really. It's just exciting to see even different distributors like really coming. I think Amazon MGM is one to just continue to watch, because as much as Red One got a lot of clickbait headlines of, oh, this is a bomb and everything, that movie was never intended to go to theaters. It was. Right. It was originally, and the budgets, the reported budget is $250 million. That's not an apples to apples budget. If it was theatrical, it'd probably be closer to $125 million.
And that doesn't impact your bottom line, Chris. I mean, it's found money for exhibition. We're not here counting studios' money. We're here bringing people in and selling tickets, and in your case, selling a beer on top of it.
Absolutely. And Red One, another one, I think will continue to play a nice cinema score on that with an A-, and we'll continue to fill up our small, like it's playing through at all of our locations coming up. It's going to fill up the smallest screens in our theaters, but it's going to fill them up all day and that's what you really want. You want from top to bottom, from your biggest screen to your smallest screen, that they're full. And if you just have one film, yeah, you're going to put that on your 5 biggest screens. But then what do you do with those other 4 screens? If you have a 9-screen theater complex like we have, what do you do with the other 4? If you have nothing to play in those other 4, you can't play all 9 for that because there's not quite that much demand unless it's an Avengers Endgame or something like that. That's just so crazy that it will fill everything. But it's healthy to have the red ones in there. It's found money, but really keep an eye on Amazon MGM. I love what they're doing. They have things like Nickel Boys and The Fire Inside. They're serving different audiences. They have great films that they're doing. And then, coming into 25 and 26, they're going to have a big slate of film, Project Hail Mary and the He-Man movie and all kinds of other things that they are working on and are going to like really fill that void and create even more competition amongst all of these studios and give everybody something else to show and watch. So, and last point I wanted to make, we came into this year off the dual strikes, and it really looked dour after the first half of the year. I saw a lot of posts maybe saying we'd finish at $7.5 billion for the domestic box office after doing $9 billion in 2023. I really think that we're going to get very close to matching 2023, which if you even ask somebody in October, is that possible?
Oh, that would be unheard of. It'd be wonderful if we have that rally at the end of the year. And let's get it straight. It's going to be starting this Friday when that rally starts. Actually, on Thursday, when this episode goes live, when the previews start, that's when the race to breaking even to last year begins. Because if we can break even or even end up 1 or 2% points behind 23, considering that nightmare we had in the beginning of the year and considering the worst October in the post-pandemic era, that would be wonderful. Nothing but good news, in my opinion.
I think that is going to happen. I think you are absolutely going to see that we finish, if it's not even, it's within a couple percentage points of last year of 2023. And then really that just drives everything going into 2025, which should be a robust year. And then you really get into, if anyone goes and looks at a release calendar in 2026, just watch out. Like you're looking at maybe one of the biggest years that we've ever had in 2026. Our industry sort of got left for dead there. I was talking to you, I was always a huge believer that not only is it not left for dead, it will come roaring back and it will be different, but it will still be a huge force and a place where, film can really be shown to everybody in a communal setting, give an experiential aspect to watching art, watching film, and drive, what we've seen ever since the start of the industry and really just come back in a big way.
For the record, I do want to say this because my communication with all the panelists is very much off the record, but I do want to share this. Going back as early as Memorial Day, when Furiosa didn't hit the numbers it was supposed to, when Fall Guy didn't hold the way it was supposed to, Chris was still saying, we're going to break even. Just you wait, we're breaking even. And he's been saying, you said it yourself a second ago, 2026 is 11 billion plus. 2026 is when we get back to that pre-pandemic standard. And I think that's what we're all hoping for here, getting to those benchmarks. And the reality, again, starts on Thursday, a really exciting time for this industry. 2 titles you mentioned a second ago that I'm really rooting for in the is there enough screens conversation. You mentioned The Brutalist from A24. Love Brady Corbett's work. That Vox Lux soundtrack, like top 5 soundtracks of all time. The pop artist Sia made it. Very unheard. People need to love that movie and that soundtrack a little bit more. Brutalist, a 4-hour-long movie with an intermission in there. Once you bake that in, it's going to fight for showtimes. I really hope it finds screens. And Ramel Ross, the director of Nickel Boys, is going to be on this podcast in December to talk about that movie. In my opinion, one of the best movies of the year. Really, really exceptional. I really hope that gets the screens it deserves.
I do too. I think he's going to end up even having a great shot ending up at the Academy Awards, with the Best Picture nomination for that. That is definitely out there. Yeah, it's just great to see. And if I could make, just one last point on other distributors that just continue to come up. Amazon MGM is on that high level. But then you look at the ascent that Neon has had this year, where they have just knocked it out of the park on something like Longlegs and continue to make interesting films like Anora and really champion that, but also have found a way now to put up some eye-popping numbers on things that usually don't perform to that level. So, hats off to them, hats off to their marketing leads over there. They've done a great job, and it's just really exciting to see. And also where A24 is going with some bigger films and some, more star-driven vehicles.
I'll throw Movie in there, man, because I think Movie is doing some really interesting things over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Movie and what they did with The Substance to get that over $70 million global. We played it forever in our Madison location. Actually, I think it's still playing today in our Madison, Wisconsin location. So, which performs a little more like an art house in that area. But it's great. And that's just what we need. We need everybody just giving just new and interesting films that are smart marketing and really just something for everyone. And when we get back to that, which we are definitely back to that, I think now, you're going to see some really some numbers that just blow a lot of people away that thought the industry might have been dead at one point.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chris. That's Chris Randleman, the Chief Revenue Officer at Flix Brewhouse and a member of the Box Office Forecasting Panel. Thanks so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
And that was Chris Randleman, the Chief Revenue Officer from Flix Brewhouse and member of the Box Office Forecasting Panel. Earlier, you heard from my colleagues, Chad Kennerk and Rebecca Pahle from Box Office Pro. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.